It's time to go live today. It's Sunday the 15th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome, everybody. It's The Right Mindset, and I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. Happy Father's Day today. If you don't know, today is Write a Book With Me Day, where we're going to write from concept to completion. We're on episode 23. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Now, so today, like every Sunday, we are going to write a book in real time. I'm still working on it. We are flying through it, though. We're on chapter 3. We're at the end of chapter 3. We're working on the zero draft. So you're seeing how I kind of beat out the scenes, among other things. Before we get started, though, as always, we got to wait for a few people to join in. But more importantly, I think it's important to understand what we're doing here today. So today isn't about look at me, I write. Today is, as always, about showing the behind the scenes of the process. Everyone says, this is how you write a book. Well, I'm actually showing you how to write a book. So instead of going, you need to outline, well, what does that look like? We are watching the process. Oh, hello, flowers. Welcome to the show. Okay. If you notice, I fixed the camera from yesterday, so that's always a good start. The second thing you got to notice is we also talk about how to work out a chapter, right? Because I talk about general, broad ideas and then building on those ideas. So one of the processes of that is obviously the zero draft. So let's share the screen, shall we? Let's share the screen. Let's share the screen, my friends. Okay. Boop. So... boop. As you can see, we've already done these steps. We've already brainstormed the character arc, short form outlining, extended outlining. Now, during the process, I'll be honest, the brainstorming could take as long as you want, because, you're working out ideas and characters. For me, I just sort of flew through it for this particular series, just so we could sort of get into the nitty gritty of it. The character arcs is where you're going to summarize and sort of beat out what the idea of what it could look like through what we call the short form outlining. And then we extend on it to really see where and how to build on it. This is where we build some of our subplots. So we've been working on the zero draft, which is ultimately, where are we? Ultimately this. It's where we take some of the extended beats, which technically almost look the same, except if we go down here, this is what it looks like. It's very broad ideas. And then we take that broad idea and we expand on that idea into a scene. This is where we might start adding some dialogue. This is where we start adding some physical action. But we're still maintaining the broad general position or broad general approach because the zero draft is not where we write our prose, okay? The prose come in your first draft. And we want to make sure that everything makes sense and everything is moving, that we're developing character voices and character choices, character positions. All that stuff is much easier when we could see it in broad general statements and not pretty prose. Now, if you do it that way, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just showing you my way so you have another way of many ways to approach your writing process. When we last stopped, I did write this note to myself where I wanted to go through this particular scene and add a touch of urgency and build up the conflict a touch more. And the reason is because we are in the third plot point. So when it comes to the 27 plot point outline, we have to remember the first section of Act 1 is known as the ordinary world. So this is where we introduce the ordinary world, which we did in chapter 1. Then we disrupt that ordinary world with an inciting incident, which we did in chapter 2. And now we're on chapter 3, which is ultimately the protagonist is reacting to the inciting incident. In this case, it would be the immediate fallout of the inciting incident, which is she's dealing with the fact that her ship was hijacked. And their ship was shot, and they're in hyperspace. So this is a nice scene, but where it's they're kind of talking and they're dealing with holes, they're patching up holes, but we got to add a little bit more urgency to it because by the end of the chapter they need to come out of the hyperspeed. Now, real quick, one of the things you might notice if you're new to this series is that I am associating chapter 3 with plot point 3, chapter 1 with plot point 1, so forth and so on. I'm doing that as an exercise, but that doesn't mean that every plot point is going to be one chapter long. But as we zero draft it out, we're going to start looking at the pace length. Remember, pace is the speed at which information is presented to the reader. We're going to be noticing, like for example, this first scene. If we look at this, the pace may feel like it's long because there's a lot of words. What do we got? We got 729 words. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a slow pace, because the more complex something is, the harder it is to read. But if we're moving through a scene, and if you notice, I have the bullet points. So this is how I control the pace. So this first beat, just so you understand what I'm doing while I'm writing, and I'm not going to explain everything, but I just want to sort of like get you on the same page visually. No pun intended. So this basically sets up the first beat of this scene. Then these explore that beat. So as far as I go in or out. But if you notice, then we go back to the beginning. And that's because we set up a second beat. All right. And then we explore that beat. And this is how you control the pace of your scenes. And if I was, say, taking this pace, this introductory moment, and I just expanded on it for like 400 to 700 words, that would become a slow pace. And the reason is because we're focused our information and movement on one thing. So if you break up your scenes into multiple things that you're exploring, that creates the ebb and flow. That makes something like, oh, all right, we are introducing the context. All right, we are challenging that context a little bit. Okay, that's a new beat. All right, now are we resolving that context, or are we going to build on that context and create a new beat? So we're going to have two beats of conflict, right? And that's how you create a movement of pace, per se, because the speed at which information is presented to the reader is changing. We're introducing information to challenge information. Then we're resolving something, and then we're introducing new information, we're challenging it, or whatever the case is. But this allows me, the zero draft way I do it, allows me a visual to understand the pace. So I can, man. Let's fix that. Boop. Boop. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. And by the way, if you have any questions about what I just talked about, any questions about the process that I'm using, any questions about writing in general, the 27 plot point outline or 27 chapter outline, if you have any questions about your own writing, feel free to ask while I'm working. It will not disrupt me. I will happily step aside and ask your question, because this is just going to be a process that I'm going to be working on for a while, but I want to ultimately allow this to be an opportunity for us to all connect and build community and help one another. Hey, what's up, Rotovator? Good afternoon, Thomas, and everyone else. Ba-doom, boom, boom. Hello. All right, so let's go through and add a little bit of urgency. All right, Laura, Olivia. Are we doing present tense for this? I forget. It doesn't matter. When you're doing a zero draft, none of that matters. It doesn't matter if it's first person, third person, whatever the case may be. You can write it in that. I traditionally don't, because I'm not writing prose per se. I'm just sort of like, I'm technically telling in zero draft. The zero draft, I need to know exactly what's happening, and I can't have any doubt or confusion. So with the zero draft, it's always very straightforward statements. Everything is what it is, and that's important because you're the writer. So when you get to the prose and you want to say, be a little bit more lyrical or be a little bit more poetic, if you know exactly what is happening or what the emotional truth is or whatever their motivations are, it's easier to write lyrically than it is not, especially because by the time we get to the immersion or the pretty prose, the zero draft will let us know exactly if it's working or not. Hey, what's up, Hannah Hart? I'm currently updating my story, for it wasn't the right amount for the book preview on Amazon KDP. Updating my story for... I'm assuming you're talking about word count. I'm assuming you're talking about word count. Updating my story for. I'm assuming you're talking about. But I could be wrong. I never want to assume if I could avoid it. But all right, let's get into it. We're gonna add some urgency, so I'm gonna have to read through the scene and work it out. Laura, Olivia, check the hall, rushing around, getting items. Okay, well that sounds like urgency. Yes, you are correct, Amando. Yeah, you gotta make sure that your word count is up to par when it comes to, especially if you're writing long form. If it's a short story, not so much. If it's a novella, there is a word count assurance. If there's long form, But what happened? Did you end up doing only 30 or 40,000 words or less? What happened? You let us know. We like hearing about the story journey. All right, so rushed around getting items. She's moving around. The love interest, who is standing there. Not doing much. Okay, I think this is because he's a hologram right now. All right. Gang member 3 has his gun out. Standing gun out. And he is standing nearby, watching her, trying. This is making it uncomfortable for Laura. Olivia is trying to focus, but keeps making comments about the gun not helping. All right, so that's adding a little bit of more. I'm going to continue on, but I'm just saying the reason. I only had 10 chapters with almost 16,000 words. That is a short story for sure, but I don't think that's enough for a page to print a book. So yeah, I understand why Amazon's like, hey, we need some more. A good rule of thumb is, if you're writing a short story, obviously less chapters make sense. But if you're writing a novella or something a little bit bigger, you want at least 27 chapters, each like anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 words on average. That is just a playing field. That is not this is what you need to do field. So I'm assuming 10 chapters, 16,000 words. Is that 1,600 words a chapter, I'm assuming? So you're in the right area for a short book per chapter. You just need more chapters. By the way, just looking at that as a developmental editor, I'm probably assuming we don't have connecting moments. We just have jumping chapters, meaning like this thing happens, and in chapter 2, this thing happens, and in chapter 3, this thing happens. One of the things to fix up the word count is just look at the logical narrative movement between chapters. If this happens, what does that influence? How does that affect the next moment? And do we have a transition of that narrative? And that usually helps. Do you know how many words are for fantasy romance books? Anywhere from 80,000 to 120,000. If you want, there is in the folder of if you go into the video description of this video, you'll see a thing that says free resources for writers. And it says free templates is the first option. You click on that link, and it'll take you to a folder. And that folder, you will find the word count for genre file that is absolutely free. You don't have to sign up for anything. So it'll tell you all that stuff. All right, let's keep it going. So back to this. I'm adding urgency. And urgency, we gave motivation, and then we gave response to that motivation, right? So the stakes are the gang member. We already know that he's a douchebag, and he's like, come on, hurry up, right? But now, again, because it's not really about writing prose, it's about being very, very broad and general with the representation of what's happening. So I'm not showing. This is just telling. I just need to know what's going on. So this is I should just write this makes it uncomfortable. I should just do this. Makes Laura Olivia uncomfortable as she tries to stay focused, but she keeps making comment about the gun not helping. So that's why. Why does that increase the urgency? Oh, I'm gonna give that to the audience. All right, so there's 6 people watching. Why does this moment, this makes this whole moment, which is gang member 3 has his gun out and he is standing nearby watching her. This makes Laura Olivia uncomfortable as she tries to stay focused, but she keeps making comment about the gun not helping. How does this add to the urgency? Let me know in the comments below. If I don't see an answer in a couple minutes, I'll explain that. Fragile. By the way, for anyone out there, happy Father's Day. I myself, as you know, lost my father several years ago, and but you know, hey, I miss him every day. But I'm glad I have some people to spend it with today to keep my brain occupied. All right, the love interest. All right. The love interest is hanging nearby. Hologram is acting relaxed and leaning on the wall. Laura is searching for the hall breaks. During this time, Laura. By the way, if anyone ever wants to know what is passive writing, can you hear the motorcycle? This is what passive writing would look like if you wrote it during this time. Laura is searching for the hall. Actually, I don't think that is passive because Laura is still the subject. This is the okay. So yeah, never mind. Ignore that. What would be passive? It would be the hall breaks. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I'm so used to writing active. All right. By the way, writing passive isn't bad. Using it sparingly and with purpose really helps add to the rhythm and flow of prose, and it also adds obviously a touch of literary voice. Like it helps your author voice. All right. Love interest is hanging out nearby. The hologram of him is just acting relaxing. I'm very aware of passive voice now. I would love to know why you're very aware of passive voice now. And while I await that answer, let me go back to this. So the reason that this adds urgency is ultimately we're creating tension between her and the gunman. She's making comments about the gun not helping, and he just wants a reason to use it. That the gun is out is also making it difficult for her to do her job, which is fine. The whole. We're just going to be more direct with the leaving one of the stolen things within the ship itself. Oh. 'Cause I've been so bad in using it. Well, yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If you use it often, that could the reason it's considered bad is just because your characters don't feel like they're taking action or that there's agency in them, and it feels like somebody's just sort of like telling the story, even if it's like first person. So it is good to try to be as active voice as much. Anyway, gang member 3 demands she hurries up. All right. Laura Olivia. tough. Let it do its thing. All right. So this is good because this creates the urgency among the group. The group themselves are now creating tension. So as he arrives back into the scene, stepping into place of the hologram, that's a glitch, and him picking something. Oh, grabbing something from off the wall. Okay. All right. The loving Laura asks him if he's ever worked on a ship or knows how to use a wrench. He says no, but he's good at following directions. All right, the two of them. All right. Okay, the love interest calls her over, and Laura says that there's one over here too. They realize there are a few spots, small but manageable, if we deal with it now. Okay. Boop. Laura asks the computer when they'll be stopping. It says that they have X amount of time, and then tells her the time amount. The time seems like they have enough if they get to work now. All right. Do. They have a conversation that shows their chemistry. This will be a quick, okay, so da. When she stops, he says that his aunt used to for the war. Okay. Noise goes off, stating that they're coming to a stop soon. All right, let me just, Laura calls it over and saying that they have one more hole to patch. Okay. They finally pop out. Okay. All right, there we go. Noise goes off, stating that they're coming to a stop soon. Oh, what do we got? Hey, what is up, sir? I use passive voice most when I am walking by myself. I don't want to talk and keep on walking. I just tell people my sandwich just got here and I'm going through a tunnel, and they're like looking at me weird as I just keep walking by. All right, so I feel like this isn't necessarily a new scene. This is just an important beat. So, all right. I don't think they should pop out of hyperspace yet. So noise goes off, stating that they're coming to us soon. Laura believes they got all the holes in the hole. Ha 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 ha. Okay. You like my Mario? Oh, you like my Hey, I'm my sandwich just got here. I'm going through a tunnel. The reason that's funny, it's because this guy I knew, that was the only thing he ever said that was funny, and I was like, I still use it to this day. All right. They finally pop. Oh, they finally pop out of hyperspace and have to stop. Okay. They finally pop out of hyperspace. Okay. So, this is what I would do. The noise gets louder, and Laura Olivia runs to the cockpit. The front of the ship, jumping in her seat. She hits a few buttons, and the computer tells her that she did a pretty good job, but it wishes that she had fixed the last one. Okay. Laura asked love interest. Okay. Last one. The love it. It's the last one. Computer said as they finally hop out of hyperspace. Okay. So this obviously builds up a little tension. We're adding a little bit. Okay. Comes to a stop. The light. We'll just do red lights. As blasting with noise, and air is filling up from the back. Okay. Okay. Being sucked from the ship itself. Okay. Boop. Okay. Well, she doesn't have to call it. They're right next to you. Laura says, okay. So what's happening here is this chapter starts off where it's like, all right, what's the deal? All right. And it's like, oh, we just got shot. We have some holes in the hull. We have to fix those. Then we give a little bit of moment to the character, and then we realize, oh, we're coming out. And then right before they come out of hyperspace, the computer's like, hey, great job, except for the one. I wish you would have did the last hole. The last one, and like, last one? And then it throws us right into this intense moment where they have to basically get the last hole. Okay. Where is it? Laura says to the computer. All right. The computer tells Laura where it is in the back of the ship. Okay. Laura runs out of the cockpit, yelling for the love interest to help her patch up one more hole. All right. By the way, the change of words and the certain words you use changes the urgency. Like yelling, runs, right? This changes the dynamic. Adding this little like, hey, it's in the back of the ship. They're in the front of the ship. So we're creating obstacles. But the other nice thing is we're seeing Laura make choices. So she barely knows this guy, but he was helpful. He's been showing some help, being kindish. And so Laura's like, you know what? We have to fix this. Come on, let's go. She doesn't think about it. She's not like hesitant. So that's a good element of character development. We're showing who she is. So, you know, it's good to give the rule of thumb is allow characters to fail, but also show them succeed. You know, if they succeed every single time, then they're not interesting. A real nice tidbit that I was given, especially in screenwriting, which does work with long form narrative, is ultimately if a character is like really brave, give them an opportunity to have that bravery challenged, right? So how brave are they? So are they extremely brave? Well, now we know it's going to take a lot, right? So you give them little challenges of bravery, and we see them push through it with bravery. And then what do we get to do when we get to Act 2 or maybe even Act 3? You get them to a point where they are afraid. And now they have to find something within to be what they have been known to be, which is brave. If a character is smart, same thing. Show opportunities where they're smart. Challenge them slightly, especially in Act 1, definitely in Act 2. But then maybe in Act 3, they're outside their depth and they really have to work at it to figure it out. Okay, this creates believable, realistic characters. The other thing is, like, if a character is forgiving, what is the threshold for forgiveness? When and where will they not forgive somebody? So those are things to think about when you're working on a character. When you're working on a character. When and where will they not forgive? When you're working on a character. All right. Well, patching up. All right. Now, here's an example. I've talked about this last time we did this. So these are two very specific beats. Well, not specific, but broad general beats. That's why this one's going to get pushed to the left and not pushed in, because this is something that is happening. So this happens. That's a scene I have to write, or a beat I have to write. Now I have to write this beat. While patching it up, something pulls off, causing the environment control to pop offline. Oh. Being challenged and filled and the pressure, the whole pressure is changing even more, and everyone is tossed around. Okay. All right. Laura and the angels are holding together, holding it together, holding the metal together, and work hard to get the patch up. They need the help of the other gang members who are being tossed around. The love interest calls them to get in there and help them, or they're going to die. Okay. Let's do this. Gang member 3. Member 3. Okay. All right. The gang members get to the back of the ship. They're fighting to get closer. All right. Okay. Here we go. Laura and the love interest are pushed off. Actually, you know what I should do? One second. Holding the metal together to make it to the hole without being forced around. Okay. All right. They're fighting to get closer. Okay, Laura and the women are pushed away from the hole, and gang member 3 is sucked to the hole and is slowly pulled through the 1 foot 1 foot opening. All right. Laura throws up and then looks away. The gang leader makes it to Laura. Oh wait. Boop. Laura and the love interest grabbing the metal. He tosses it up and it flies to the wall, sticking to the area where the hole is. All right. They all drop to the ground, and Laura runs over and starts welding it. Okay. Because I believe in space, the air is pulled, right? Air is pulled from the ship hull in space, or is it pushed? Yeah. Yeah, because it technically the air gets pushed out of the ship, and not pulled into the ship. So that would be how it works. Okay, so the gang leader makes it to Laura, and the love interest grabbing the medal. He tosses. It. Let's make it very. We have to know what he's talking about. The metal sheet. Up, and it flies to the wall, sticking to the air. They all drop to the ground. Boop. Okay, and runs over and welds it. During this time, but they end up. Oh, we don't have to worry about that. All right, that we can get rid of. The ship was damaged on the inside. Okay, make it more of a surviving situation. The ship was damaged on the inside from the thrashing around. Okay. Okay, there we go. Chapter 3 done. That was fun. All right. All right, let's look at this. All right. Let's do the numbers. We'll make sure 729, 729, 729. Okay. This I can get rid of. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. Oh. 888. All right. Okay, so. Oh. Wait a minute. Let me go back here and let's see. Okay, there we go. That's the soft chapter break. All right. So it's not a hard chapter break, it's a soft chapter break. 538. Yes. Yes. 538. And of course, the last bit. Boom. 350. All right. Now, as you can see, if we look at this a little closer, let me get a little closer for you. Make it a little closer. What was it? 350, right? 350? Is that what it was? Yeah, 350. All right. So if we look at this scene is action-packed, and it has 350 words in the zero draft. And I think I've mentioned that before, that when you're working with action, sometimes during the zero draft, it's short because we're just like action beat, action beat, action beat, action beat. But once you're writing it out with the immersion and character reactions and the emotional experiences, it can balloon up. I'll be honest with you. But right now, we're looking at, let's see, this chapter's at, let's do this. If you notice, I have this this tool over here that kind of like tells me what it'll be once I write the prose out. And I've done that based on like past works, and I figured out a formula that almost gets me near where I want to, which also creates the what I would call my my goal. So my goal right now for chapter 1 would be 4,100 words. So if I could write less than that and still make a solid chapter, I'm happy. For chapter 2, it's For chapter 2, it's 245 2,451 words. That's a pretty good chapter length. And then chapter 3 will be 3,800 when everything is said and done. So those are good numbers to try to reach. But let's get back into the fray. Now we're on chapter 4. Boop. All right. So I'm pretty excited. We're on chapter 4. We've made it to the chapter 4, everybody. We've made it to the chapter 4. I think I have it right. Chapter 4. Yeah, it's right there. Boom. Okay. All right. Chapter 4. Yay! We're getting there. We're getting there. We're technically, what is this? We're almost halfway through Act 1. If every plot point has been a chapter so far. So if this is chapter 4, chapter 5 would be technically, the beginning of chapter 5 would be halfway, and then the end of chapter 5 would be the end. All right, let's do it. Okay. All right. So now the rhythm of this should be that they are more relaxed. Now, what is chapter 4 in the plot? If we're looking at plot point 4 in the 27 plot point outline, this is the first plot point that brings us into Act 1, Section 2. Problem disrupts the protagonist's life. Now they are within the disruption. They are now settling into it. So that means we have to set up the context of that disruption, we have to challenge that disruption, and we have to resolve that disruption. In this case, chapter 4 begins the setup stage. This is the protagonist reacts to and reflects on the long-term impacts of the inciting incident, which is the hijack. All right. Well, that's not going to happen. One chapter per plot point. Yeah, no, at the end of the day, once I start writing out the prose of, especially the first draft, that's where we're going to start going, we might have to extend, we might have to break this up. But also, you could look at it like, let's say I have 3 chapters in a row and they're about 3,000 words each. I know that one of those chapters has a shorter scene. I might break it up. I might do a short, 2 short chapters in a row. And that just helps with pacing sometimes. I'm just saying. Might have to have another 3 chapters here. For chapter 4, you think chapter 4 will have to be 3 chapters? Let's see. Maybe. Or are you saying for your own book? That's interesting. It's always good to see, trust it. Remember, you could always go back to the original version. You're allowed to try things. I was just saying that in the writing class last Monday where I was like, look, great writing is rewriting, and they're like, and somebody was like, oh, no, what do you mean? And that's the reality. It's like, it is scary to be like, I got to throw stuff out and change things up. And it's like, but the original is still there as long as you don't delete it. So just make a new folder or a new file and play with it, see what you could do, make choices. And that's where you can discover things. And you might discover things that aren't necessarily working with the change, but there are some elements that might work with what you did have. And that's the advantage of trying things. And that's why I like the zero draft, because I could try things without having to go back and like rewrite pretty prose. And I say that knowing that when I do get to the pretty prose, I'm still going to be doing the work. If I'm doing a third draft, there's still going to be work. There's still going to be adjustments, changes. I might remove things. I might I might turn one chapter into 2 chapters. So it all exists. It all exists. All right. Let's hello. Is it me you're looking for? All right. So what's going on here? Laura continues working on the ship. She continues to click the buttons. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 beep, boop, boop, boop. The gang talks about the heist. Oh, yeah, okay. Where they are in the plan, etc., etc. The love interest comes over, asking how the ship is because he notices her listening in. Yeah, okay. Laura tells him that he's... Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's do it. We're doing good on time. We're doing good on time. Let's do this. I'm gonna take this and do one of these. Boop. Do 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 do. I was. If you watch the this live often, you'll hear me go do 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 do, and I also do it on the pre-records. And I was watching a video the other day about Kiss, and it's Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley being interviewed by Howard Stern, and Gene Simmons, Howard Stern's like, Gene, has Paul ever come in with a song where you're just like, eh? And he's like, let me tell you something. All right, there was a song he comes in, and he comes in, he goes, I got the song for you, and I was like, all right, what is the he's like, what's the song called? And he's like, oh, I was made for loving you. And he's like, oh, I like it. And he's like, yeah, what's the first line? And he's like, oh, the first line is, I want to give it to you. Well, oh yeah, good. What's the next line? He's like, oh, in the darkness. Oh yeah, in the darkness. Yeah. And then what else? And the next line is, there's so much I want to do to you. And he's like, yeah, right. And he's like, but then he's like, well, what do you want me to do? And And Gene's like, well, Paul's like, you gotta go. Do, 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 do. And Gene's like, no, this is terrible. I hate this song. And then they played it, and and he's like, everybody loves that song. And Paul added that like sometimes they'll play like a festival, and they'll be like they'll play near death metal bands or like hardcore bands, and then and they're all the people in the audience are there to see Slayer and all these other bands, and then they come up and Kiss starts playing. I was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me, right? And you just see he's like the whole crowd, all these death metal people are like do 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 do. And I'm like, look, no matter how it is so funny, no matter how crazy Gene Simmons can be with this money stuff, like Kiss is such an important part of the musical landscape that it's just I was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me. And I can't get enough of you, baby. Can you get enough of me? All right, let's move on. Right? It's Chia-Cha. Also, Kiss did a funny thing where they put their blood into ink, and the Marvel Comics made a comic book based on Kiss. Look, I lost everybody. I lost a whole bunch of people because I started singing. That's why I love Rammstein. Oh yeah, du hast, du hast mich much. Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Ja, nein, sprechen Sie Deutsch. Can't believe I lost everyone because I was singing Kiss. All right, let's get back to the part that people are here to watch the writing. I don't know German. I just make it all up. Ja, das good. That's very good. Wunderbar. I don't know any German either. Guten Tag. All right. Let's see. Laura continued working on the ship. Doing well, the gang is talking about it. Is tired, concerned about what will happen to her after they're done with her. Though she is relieved that that gang member 3 is gone. Okay. She notices that they're not concerned that they lost him, but are more excited about how they can now split the money X amount of ways. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm establishing the new context, the new setup of what's going on. So for chapter 4, it's about the reflection and the reaction and long-term reflection of what just happened with the inciting incident. We're learning a few things about the gang. They don't care about gang member 3. They're more interested in the money. She's concerned. She's thinking about what's going to happen now. They have me hijacked, all this stuff. Now, obviously, when I write this into pro form, we're going to be exploring this through, since it'll be in first person, we'll be exploring this through Laura's actual concerns. She'll be talking to herself. She'll be making comments to herself. She'll be noticing things about them. Though, of course, remember in writing, you don't say she noticed or he noticed. You actually just, like, he noticed a wolf walk by. You just go, a wolf walked by. Like, remember that. Notice becomes like a filter word. He saw, she heard. Like, you just have that thing happen. But in this instance with 0 drafts, we don't need that. What's going on? What is going on? Okay. How do I turn off? Oh, I know what yeah, that's right. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, there we go. All right. I turned off all the AI stuff. All right. AI as in like the camera listens to my hand motions. I'm Italian, so I have to use my hands when I talk, so I just turned off the hand motions, so it's not. Anyway, all right. Keeping to herself, Laura try to be small while the gang dealt with this situation. Okay, so this would actually go here. Boop. Okay. And then we do that. All right. I would almost do this. And the reason is because this sets up the beat. This explores what's happening during that beat. And then what is she doing during the diagnostics and the gang talking? Well, she's concerned, she's worried, right? But another element of another beat within that major beat is that we're going to reveal some information about the gang. And then she continues to click the buttons needed to make the ship go on. Now, all right, let's get here. All right, the gang talks about the heist, where they're at in the plan and what needs to happen. Something about the buyer and Seed, what they stole, and who they stole it from. So this part right here is the conversations. I don't really have to go into that. You might be thinking, but Thomas, don't you need to know what the plan is, what the heist is, and all that stuff? No, because this is still the zero draft. It's general, broad ideas. Can I work on all the heist stuff? I could. I'm more than welcome to do anything I want. That stuff I'll probably get more into as I develop the zero draft and go back and start, because there is a stage where we're going to go back and clean up the zero draft a little bit, and that's where we start adding more specific elements that we can explore in the first draft. But a lot of times I might work that information out in the first draft because that's where I'm starting to write the prose, though first draft is not immersive prose, it's just functional prose. And functional prose will have he heard, he saw, they noticed, right? Because it's just, again, making it as straightforward as possible so I know what's on the page. Because then when I do my second draft, that's where I add the immersion, the emotion. I change he noticed to being a little cleaner. Like, what is it that they noticed about it? So if a wolf walked by, right, he noticed the wolf walk by. What is the character noticing about the wolf other than the wolf is walking by? And that would be second draft stuff. That's when I start adding the more internal or process of it. And that, because that's where like the work has to really get into it. You're starting to add your author voice and all these other things. So first draft is still going to be more straightforward, but it is prose. We're doing functional prose in first draft. All right, anyway. The language of their species. Ooh ha ha, ooh ha, Han my buki. All right. Having an excuse that she needs to speak with the ship. Keeps breaking up, so she's missing details, but getting the gist. Okay. All right, so what I would do here is this is technically setting up the beat, and then this is what it's about, and this is kind of like adding to it. Okay, so the reason I reversed that is because this sets up the scene. Keeps breaking up, and we slowly but surely build onto what is going on. And these are all about the details. So let's. This is what I like about these kind of things when I'm like working on a zero draft. Like, it's just, it's just information, and I don't really need, because the heist information is not interesting. Remember, it's always about character, And yeah, but I like Ocean's 11 because they're robbing three casinos. Now that's not why you're watching the movie. You're watching Ocean's 11 because of the camaraderie and the relationships between Brad Pitt and George Clooney's characters. You're watching the very subtle, small, and you could probably blink and miss it. Romance plot between George Clooney and Julia Roberts, Eric Roberts' sister, also pretty one. But it's leading up to the heist, and then we get the reveal of the heist, and that's really fun that we just sort of see it unfold. But the details of the heist aren't necessarily focused on. It's how the characters are behaving that's focused on. So that's why right now I don't really care Like, did they steal like, plans or gems or whatever? Because again, it's sci-fi, so I could end up making it whatever I want, and I want to have that freedom for later. I don't want to put time into that right now. I just want to get the basis of the idea. Because again, any heist is a heist, right? And we have a heist, we stole stuff, and we're going to sell it, right? Like, that is a heist. So do we really need the details of what the heist was? Unless, of course, narratively it was important, like they found the cure for, whatever. Could I connect it to the war? Because we keep talking about the war. I could. But if I don't, it allows the war to be world building. And could I connect it? That just helps the world feel lived in. Everybody has some sort of comment on the war that had happened. So it's nice to sort of almost separate those things, because you don't always have to connect stuff into the narrative. That's what makes a world feel lived in. Explaining world history is not as powerful as lived in world history, which is like, let's say they go to a tavern and the tavern has several swords, a helmet, and maybe like an amulet on the wall. And every time people walk in and they order a drink, they turn to it and they go, "To the fallen," right? And then they drink their drink. We don't really have to explain that, but you can slowly see the fact that there was a war and they lost, and those were the heroes of the war. And maybe they were the heroes of the war. They're the veterans. They lived, but they died of old age, and now we celebrate them in this town. And that's stronger world building than just being like, somebody walks into the tavern that held the ornaments of the fallen veterans that fought in World War VII, and their battle armor is a way for us to believe, and every patron shows their respect with a drink purchased, raising their glass to celebrate the victory that is this freedom because of their gallant bravery, right? Like, that's not as powerful of lived-in world than seeing people have sort of like these cultural behavior things. Those are a little bit more interesting. That's not saying you can't do that, what I just did, the exposition dump. I'm just saying it's more interesting to show lived-in world building than it is to give world exposition. Okay. For example, the hobbits. Oh, it's second breakfast. That would be lived-in world, because they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But it's time for second breakfast. Or I think it's elven bread, and they're like, one bite can survive you for a month, or whatever it is. And the hobbit's like, I already eaten 4. The love interest comes over asking how the ship is because he noticed her listening. Now remember, this is going to be first person, but so he noticed wouldn't necessarily be represented on the page. But now I have that there because in a zero draft, we have to understand motivation. So I understand his motivation for coming over, which changes behavior. He is going there to interact with her because she was listening. And now he has a purpose to be there instead of him just showing up so they could have a conversation. He understands what they were saying, but he says it in the language. And she says, no, I have no idea, which is funny because she has a translator, and we've talked about it. I like that joke. Okay. Be funny if she actually said gang member 3. All right. All right. So, slightly. Now, obviously, in a pro, like when you're writing prose, you wouldn't write Laura let her guard down slightly, or Laura let her, Laura lets her guard slightly down. Like you wouldn't write that per se. Um, you would show that. You would show the behavior. You would show how she's doing. Ro making an LOL. What's the LOL for? Because I don't know if you're watching with the video where it is, or if you're watching back. Because I did say a couple things, but all right. Let's go slightly. So yeah, this is zero draft kind of writing, not prose writing. In prose, I would want to show this. I would want to show her behavior more than I would. For me personally, I like to show. And people are gone. All right, Laura lets down her guard slightly, tells him that she's not even paid off the ship. He says that is damaged. Frustrated. All right. I'm going to take away... oh, wait. Okay. Empathy. Again, in a zero draft, we're just going to be straightforward. And we're just going to sort of like explain what is being said. Okay? So, yes, more about the ship, trying to restore and have empathy. Asking if the ship will make it to the next stop for her to deliver products. All right, Laura said, actually, you know what? I can actually, boop, that's another beat. Okay, Laura said, because it's another beat because it's setting up plot forward. So this is sort of like, this beat is, oh, with the, I don't know German at all. I just make it all up. Yeah, that's funny. This is a beat because, well, actually, if we go back here, so this beat is, he notices her paying attention, so he comes over. Then he's there and he wants to sort of connect to her. So then he's like, oh. So then he's trying to connect to her and they have a little beat. And then he tries to change the subject to help her and he's like, hey, what's the deal? Blah, blah, blah. Just sound angry and shout a lot. Yeah. That is German. Okay. Let's bring this up. All right. 11 just. By the way, in the zero draft, if you do write dialogue or if you do write, right, and do right, I think it'd be better if I do this. if you do write dialogue or if you do write like beats, remember while you're writing the prose in the first draft, you could obviously change everything that you write. So you don't have to. Sometimes I just use the dialogue to create a rhythm or to create like rapport or develop the character's voice. But when I get to the actual first draft, there's a good chance that I'm going to change some, if not all of it, in a scene. To know why. Wait. Oh, yeah. So know why. There we go. Okay. This I could take off because I already did this. What I'm going to do is bring this up. Oh wait, I gotta go to chapter 3. Where's chapter 3? Oh, there we go. Where is the hologram? Yes. All right. That means I gotta change I gotta adjust the word count to 571. 571. All right. Okay, chapter 4. What we got here? Whoa. I had some friends from Laos when I was a teen. One day their parents had come home from work and we were in the basement. Their mom was talking to them from upstairs, obviously not knowing the language. I was like, dude, your mom is tricked. That's funny. I asked if everything was fine or if I should leave, and he said, no, it's 9. And you're like, oh, calm down, buddy. I've been doing this for an hour. All right, so I'm actually gonna stop. Let's see where we're at with the word count so far. 522. Boop. There we go. 522. All right, there we go. We are almost done with chapter 4. I just have to add this little part, but we're an hour in, and I like to just do an hour. So let's give it. Now it's time for you guys. The floor is yours, as they say. Do you have questions about writing? Do you have questions about what I did today? Do you have questions about what I talked about at any point today? Do you have questions about your own writing? Whatever the case is, let's get it going. Ho, here we go. I'm starting plot point 18 next week. Advice in a nutshell. I could do a nutshell. I'm having a right good think about this chapter, and I feel the mud which stuck this afternoon is beginning to clear. Okay. I see what you're saying. All right, so first off, for anyone who's listening, what is plot point 18? That is the last plot point in Act 2. It is, despite the setbacks, the protagonist decides that they will succeed no matter what. And you're asking for advice on plot point 18. Now, depending on what your narrative is, I'll do a nutshell, okay? Depending on what your narrative is, based on what happens in plot point 17, which is the protagonist decides or does take action to resolve their problem, and therefore they go through some trials and tribulations, some tests. They are basically pushed through the limits. This would be how they feel because of that and what it means to move forward. All right? So the protagonist is deciding that they will go succeed. So whatever the trials and tests were in 17, it's going to emotionally influence plot point 18. And like, all right, that was a lot. I went through a lot, either physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, whatever the case is, but I need to do whatever I got to do. And you could show that through obviously behavior or, whatever the scene is, however it's laid out. But ultimately, plot point 18 is taking whatever happened in 17 and how does that emotionally manifest into their will to move forward. Because remember, Act 3 starts off with plot point 19, and it is the calm before the storm, and we are now officially in the victory seems impossible. So they're basically getting closer and closer to, like, should I or should I not? Okay. He is moving forward. Yeah, ultimately, yeah, I guess that would be the nutshell. He is moving forward, but it's you have to maintain that emotional truth from 17. So whatever their trials were from 17, how has it affected them, and how does it influence them to even decide to keep going forward? So I know it sounds almost vague, but when you're writing, remember, it's all about internal truth. It's all about how characters are being affected, and the physical stuff is just a manifestation of how they feel or what situations you put them in. And no matter what situation you put them in, they have to have some sort of emotional reaction. Great question, by the way. Great question. Any other questions from my fellow listeners? What's going on with writing? Boo, 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 boo. I was made for loving you, baby. Yes, the emotional truth from 17 makes sense. Yeah, because, cause and effect. One of the things that I've learned working with clients over 20 plus years in whatever field it was, either it was, music, or it was, in the acting world, or if it was writing screenplays or writing books, is when it comes to the creative element, there has to be a cause and effect to everything. Even in writing, like, why am I going, why did I go up and down, right? Like, there's a cause and effect. And the reason is because it creates a movement, an emotional truth to the music, right? Even War Pigs, it's evolving. It's getting more and more complex, right? Sing that. That's funny. It's getting near dawn. Down. I'm not getting down. Okay. Anyway, but when it comes to writing, the emotional truth, what I was going to say is, clients, what they'll end up doing is they write really intriguing scenes or really interesting chapters, but they're not necessarily allowing what has happened to be a part of what is happening. If a character has a loss, that needs to stay with them forever. However, it can diminish, but it still needs to happen. That's why Last of Us was terrible in season 2, because Joel died, and we're not necessarily, she's just like happy, I'm gonna be dead. Like, she's just happy. She's like, oh, I remember our first kiss. Like, she's not even, when she finds out the woman her friend is pregnant, she's thinking about the future. She's not thinking about, oh, I don't want to be responsible for another death. Like, because we find out that she feels responsible because Joel died saving her, but meanwhile took away her agency of being murdered to find a cure that we learned isn't necessarily possible. But when you're writing, you got to allow the past to affect the present in everything that happens. Hannah Hart says, I would love to give you my email address, for I do want a beta reader, if that's okay with you, and if you want to read my story. So if you go to my website, which is makearightleftheere.com, I'll put it on the board. Boop. Go to makearightleftheere.com, go to my contacts page, and just email me. You can email me through there. Then I will have your email, and we could discuss, the possibilities of a beta read. All right. I'm always happy to discuss anything. We never know. You never know. All right. Rotavator says, I've been right. By the way, is Rotavator those like building blocks that are like Legos, but they're metal? Am I thinking of something? Or am I thinking the robot? I don't know. I've been writing more lyrics rather than story lately. Sorry. Hey, lyrics are the same way. Like the movement, if every line needs to build on the context of the previous line. Unless, of course, you're writing, what is it called? cake, 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 pound cake, cake, cake. Right? Then you don't have to worry about it. If you're writing a song that is literally, whatever. Some father. What is it? It's what is that? My dad, father, don't do digga do digga digga do digga digga do 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 do. Unholy. I think it's called Unholy, right? Unholy, unholy lyrics, right? Mama don't know daddy's getting hot at the body shop, doing something unholy. And then the lyric is, he lucky, lucky, yeah. Woo. He lucky, lucky, yeah. You know what I'm saying? But it's a hit because it's creating like a vibe, right? But it's not a song that's gonna last with us like a Beatles song. But a lucky, lucky girl. She got married to a boy like you. She'd kick you out if she ever knew about all the you tell me that you do. And if you notice those lines, they form on each other. There's a clear cause and effect. Lucky, lucky girl. Now we have to build on that. She got married to a boy like you. So they're qualifying what lucky, lucky girl. So even with lyrics, you gotta do that. Cause his important thing, sometimes I feel like I'm dwelling on it, but I should be, cause it is, it's his important thing. For God's sakes. Yeah, but I'll put it to you this way, Flowers. All right, here's an example. Okay, I'll even use myself. So I live with chronic depression. I lost both my parents and I lost my dog. But those things aren't who I am, but they do influence a lot of choices, right? So like when my parents died, now my choices are less, let me build an empire within the entertainment industry, and more, let me slow down. I'm in my 40s, I'm going to be 48 next year. I want to sort of relax. I've earned that right. I'm semi-retired. I did what I had to do. And now, you know what? I'm just going to focus on writing and being in the writing world and teaching and all that stuff. And, here we go. Right? So that choice is because of that. And I live with the pain of the parents' loss. And I live, but when you talk to me, I'm not always going to be like, hi, how's it going? My dad died, and become sad. So the things are there, and there can be triggers, but ultimately they are making choices because of what has happened. So if that makes sense. If that makes sense, as you say, yes. You can call me Wait, what is it? You can call me. You could call me. Bow. What is the I can't remember. You could call me. You could be my bodyguard, and I could be your friend. You gotta call me now. Okay. It affects me. It affects me. But it's not like who I am. Like it doesn't become who I am. But it does influence choices. It does influence triggers. It does influence behavior. It does, right? So it's all. Funnest story about Rotovator. It was actually part of an album title that I didn't know the correct spelling of. It's actually supposed to be Rotovator. I called it Roto. Is that the same one? Oh, I say, Rotorvator. And I called it Rotovator for so long. Oh, that is interesting. I just got attached to it my way instead. I did it my way. Right? What is it? I did it my way. How's that song go? And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few. Sorry. You know, on this channel, we get into it. Sometimes we start singing. We can't shut me up. And I apologize for that. All right. Any more writing? Uh-oh. What's this guy want? Okay. All right. Can we have a funeral for my Ninja Creamy, please? Because it's just given up the ghost from overwork. Let us have a moment of silence. You got to call me out. That's what it is. Call me out. That's it. You got to call me out. That's a great song. Fun fact, Chevy Chase was asked to do that the day of, and he was on the plane, and they memorized the lyrics to the song by the time he got there. If you'll be my bodyguard, I will be your long-lost pal. I will call you Betty, and Betty, when you call me out. Yeah, that's it. That's a great song. Great song. Great song. Okay, all right. There was something I wanted to do. You can hold. All right. One second. Okay, so Anyway. We got that little winky dinky do. All right. Maybe this will help. This will help us bring up some questions. Let's start with let's see. There we go. All right. I'm writing this out here. 1 second. Let me write this out. Uno momento, por favor. Okay. Okay, here we go. Boom. All right. So the poll is, what's the biggest challenge you face when trying to write strong prose? Okay. We have crafting vivid descriptions, developing unique voice style, writing natural sounding dialogue, and pacing and sentence flow. Feel free to vote in your thoughts, and we could talk about that. We got a little bit of time, so we might as well jump on it. While you're doing that, all right, boom, 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 boom. Take. Reluctantly crouched at the starting line, engines pumping and thumping in time. The green light flashes, the flag goes up, churning and burning, they yearn for the cup. They deftly maneuver and muscle for rank, fueling, burning, faster on an empty tank. Reckless and wild, they pour through the turns. Their prowess is potent and secretly stern. What do we got? Oh, hey! Rose says, consistent style. Happy birthday with cake. Love cake. Never there. You're never there. Okay. A consistent style. Yeah, you know, speaking on consistent style, the way to do that is practice. I don't know if you know that. But to be fair, you only need to have a consistent style through the book, not necessarily book to book. However, your style is a part of your brand. So people will come to your books for your style. So for me, hopefully, people like the cinematic, lyrical, um, character-driven kind of prose that I work. The flow of my imagery and things like that. And if that's something they like that immersion. They like being a part of the discovery as they read through the chapters, and they're not being spoon-fed all the exposition and all this, but they want to sort of feel like they're a part of this group of people and watching, but also sort of being there. Like that's a part of the consistent style that I'm trying to create, right? And hopefully somebody reads that and they're like, oh, you know what? I like this, so I'm going to read another book of theirs. And, oh, look, the style is consistent. But that doesn't mean you have to have a consistent style, especially if you're writing in different genres. You know, for me, I just have a preferred style because I like reading that. I like experiencing that. So even in this epic fantasy, I'm going to try to maintain that consistency. Not epic fantasy, this sci-fi book that we're working on this series. But at the end of the day, it is going to be first person present, which is something I don't traditionally write in because I like third person limited. So that choice changes the presentation of what I normally like to write, or the consistency of what I normally write. So you're allowed to, based on not only genre but also the way you approach it. So your POV change, or if it's present or past tense, and it's okay to do that. Sometimes I get all poetic, and then I'm like, why am I writing like this? Is that normal? If you're talking about within your prose, there's nothing wrong with having like more mechanical writing, one might say, where it's just like, they enter the building and surrounding them. 16 men surrounded them throughout the bar, sitting at various tables. The room filled with the aroma of smoke and cigars. And the trail ends of the mining tunnels from down the road. This Jacob sat upon a chair, moving in, having to bust off some of the crime. He called over a waiter who was there before his arm went up, asking, oh, what will you have today? Right? Like, you could be very straightforward like that, but then, like, out of nowhere, be like, he swiped the musk of smoke dancing around, around his eyes, colliding with his hair, and wrapping itself within his nose. The scent itself coughed him away. The scent itself forced him to cough. Whatever. Like, you can add little moments like that to slow the pace down, to kind of dive deeper into the experience, and then sort of like back up and go a little bit more quote unquote mechanical. And I don't use mechanical as in a negative way. I'm just saying, like, it's more straightforward. It's just like, this is happening. So it's not, the consistency would be that you do that. So when you slow it down and you go more into the immersive experience of a character, you could get a little bit more poetic, or as I like to call it, lyrical. But and then when you want to keep the pace moving, it becomes a little more quote unquote mechanical. There's nothing wrong with that. But the consistency is that you're doing that. But it's important to have consistency, just in the sense of, like, your reader wants to, they're expecting it. But that doesn't mean you have to have that kind of. I would recommend the consistency through a book, but not necessarily book to book, depending on, like, what you're trying to accomplish. Next thing I know, the characters start sounding all Shakespearean. Again, that's fine as long as that's what you do. You know what I'm saying? In the book. If they're like, yes, but for a fortnight from now, thou shalt not bear arms to me, as you bite your thumb to my presence, and then another one's like, 2 households, both alike in dignity, and fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge to new mutiny. To be or not to be, that is the question. I'm like, what? But if you're saying that, bro, if you're like, I'm like, what why am I writing? Like, by the way, to this comment, you are normal. There's nothing wrong with writing poetically or lyrically or purpley or Shakespearean. Yeah, but not in a gunfight. Do you bite your tongue at me? draw your sword. Okay. To this, like if you're thinking that, like you have to make the conscious decision to adjust and fix that. You know, you have to figure out what you need to change to be more consistent to what you feel you want to do. And that's an important distinction. What is it you want to do? Do you want the Shakespearean kind of fluctuation? Do you want the poeticness? Do you want it mechanical? Do you want to switch between them? That's a choice you have to come up with. But I will say this. If every character sounds Shakespearean and complex, it won't be interesting in the sense like, who are these characters individually, if that makes sense. And if you are not able to write consistently in the Shakespearean tongue, that might cause an issue when it comes to clarity. And I think I talked about this yesterday. Was it yesterday? Where clarity is the first rule. Everything has to be clear for it to make sense. Because if there's no clarity, there's no context. If there's no context, we don't understand what's going on enough to challenge it. Unless it's like a Boondock Saints moment or something. I love that movie. The second one, I don't know if I really enjoyed the second one, but the first one. All right, what we got with this? We got 2 votes on the. We got 6 people watching. If you want, please vote. I have a poll in it. I would like to discuss what's the biggest challenge. By the way, if you vote, it does not tell me who voted on what. It is anonymous, so feel free to vote as you desire. You cannot, will not, nor would I ever, even if I knew, call anyone out on their vote. So feel free to just vote. We have 2 votes out of 6 viewers. If you can't find the vote because you're on your phone, there's an option to look at the comments, the option to look at the live chat, and then it'll allow you to look at the thing. I went with pacing and flow. I said pacing. Well, all right. Yeah, if you want me to know what you voted on, that's also fine. Pacing and flow. I said pacing and flow. I could talk about pacing and flow while we try to get the votes in, but what is the biggest challenge you face when trying to write strong prose? Pacing and flow. So when it comes to pacing and flow, remember pace is defined at the speed at which information is presented to the reader. Now, what does that mean? It means the more guilty too. Okay, that's fine. Let's talk about it. The more information you throw at the reader, the slower the pace becomes, ultimately because they're taking more information in. The less information you present to the reader for context, the faster the pace is. Now, here's the caveat. If it's written with logical narrative movement, the technique that we've talked about in the past, where everything sort of like links to each other, and the complexity of what you're writing is low, meaning a low learning curve, it can be a fast read, even if it's a slow pace. One thing that I definitely learned throughout the years is that slow pace doesn't mean a slow experience, okay? It just means that the information is being presented more purposefully, or more, I shouldn't say purposefully, intentional. So a slower pace would be like, let's go into the emotional truth of what this character's experience. Let's describe the environment a little bit more. That becomes a slower pace because we are expanding what it is we're learning. The information that's coming out is focused on one thing for an extended period of time. If it's just like they entered the house, the room smelt of mold, and they continued on into the living room and sat on the couch, that's a fast pace because we are getting information quickly that's establishing context and movement. Context and movement. They walked through the house. Context. It was moldy. Context. They moved on into the living room and sat on the couch. Context resolved, right? So that's why it becomes fast paced. However, if you want to explore the emotional experience of he walked through the door, the mold hit him as it did in his fourth year of life. The way after a long divorce, his parents' separation caused him to live with his aunt. This very house that this very house that now hit him again. He thought he had lived past this moment, but here he is at 40, walking into the living room of his past aunt. And that is a slower pace because we are getting more information about the experience. So when it comes to the challenge of writing pace, you have to think about what is most important in this scene. Is the description of the environment important for you because you want to explore what it looks like? They're in a castle, and I want everyone to know what the castle looks like. So I'm just going to explain and describe the castle walls and the paintings on the walls and like the floor and like all the furniture. You can do that. But is that for you, or is it important to the narrative? What are we learning looking around the castle that will seed something to inevitably come, foreshadow something that's inevitably to pay off, or I should reverse that, seed something that will inevitably pay off, or foreshadow something that is to come? Is it influencing or triggering something of importance emotionally for the character? If so, describe the castle. If it's not, I would recommend maybe not describing the castle. The castle needs enough context to know it's a castle, where the character is. So again, a very simple and very basic, generic example is always the knight walked through the stone halls, his armor, his armor clanking off the hardened path, whatever, bouncing off the walls and hitting muffling on the fabric that lied on the half fall of the tunnel, right? That could be considered slow. So maybe we just be like, he walked through the stone tunnel or he walked through the stone hallway, reaching the end to the king's quarters or the queen's quarters. Sometimes you just have to get there, but the context is he is walking through the stone hallway. All right, we know it's a hallway. We know it's made of stone. He's walking through the castle hallway, right? The stone castle hallway. Sometimes you just need to get that. That is a fast pace, but why do we need to describe how he's walking through it? Unless, again, is he hesitant to get to the queen's quarter? Why is he going to the queen's quarter? What is it about this tunnel that might trigger him? Now we're talking about slowing it down. So that's what you're supposed to be looking for when you're writing your pace and your sentence flow. How is this influencing the narrative to either seed or foreshadow? How is it influencing the emotional truth of the character's experience? If it doesn't do any of those things, but you still need to go through that, allow enough context to move the character and the reader through that moment. If you need to build on foreshadow, seeding, and emotional truth, you slow down the pace. And that's really that's the secret to good pacing. So no schizophrenic dialogue permitted. I mean, you can. Is it okay if I do email you? Could I send you 1 or 2 chapters at a time? Well, again, I'm not agreeing to being a beta reader, but you can email me and let's discuss the details of what you're looking for and what you need. Because, it could be something simple or it could be something that's going to be time consuming. If it's time consuming, then we might have to work out something a little bit more in depth. So I suggest just email me, just so I know I have your email, and then I can respond to it and we could work out how it would look like going forward. Because if I have to read a whole book, we're talking something. If it's just like you want me to read a chapter and give you a couple notes, that's something I could do for anybody, So email me and we'll take it from there. Okay, Hannah? I'm happy to get that email from you. As far as pacing and sentence flow, I hope that helped. If you have any questions about what I just said for clarity or you need more information, please let me know. Because you don't notice everything in a room all at the same time, correct? Hell, on one of my regular walks, I was wondering how long have those trees been there? Exactly. Yeah, excellent, Hannah. Yeah, just email me. Yeah, because in reality, people only notice 5 things. I've talked about the gorilla experiment where there's people playing basketball. There's 2 teams of 5. and they're throwing around basketballs, and the gorilla walks in and just waves, and no one notices the gorilla until you notice the gorilla, if that makes sense. Like, you're purposefully like, I know there's a gorilla coming through here. Then you'll notice it. But our brain doesn't, just so it functions correctly, it restricts us to 5 to 7 points of information. I tend not to notice things. Well, also sometimes, we're a little lax with the important notes. But when it comes to writing too, if you're writing in first person, what they notice is what they are noticing. So it has to make narrative sense to their choices. If it's third person limited, I would also argue that it is coming from the character. The character is noticing something very specific. So if you're going to be lyrical and describe the way the trees flow with the breath of the wind shifting in a song of rustle, a musical rustle, the lyrical, that's the character experiencing it that way. So that might be more appropriate for, say, a bard. Probably be less appropriate for somebody who is a murderer and likes eating people. Somebody who eats people and is a murderer might look at that as a distraction. Or they might be like, it's moments like this that remind me that there was a time when I was human. So the way the wind blows through the trees is actually a trigger to remember something that they are not. Sometimes you got to eat people, but that's the thing. But if it is third person omniscient, now the narrator has a perspective, not the characters, the narrator, whoever the God narrator is. If it's a story, somebody telling the story, or if it's a God character, then it becomes a little bit more, the POV is always going to be through them. I give too many details and too little at other times. Again, too many details is subjective to what your goal is. If you need if the character is remember, let the character's truth dictate the scene. Who is the POV? What are they noticing? Why are they noticing it? And how is it affecting them emotionally? Then, too much detail might not necessarily be too much detail. You know what I'm saying? So, too little detail might not be too little detail depending on what they care about. Let's say it's a character who is an artist and they love painting and they're walking through a house. They may not notice the dullness of the living room. It's a white rug with a white couch. Maybe it has a little, whatever. But then they then they walk past a painting and now describe the painting because they might notice the painting. They might walk into a room that is contoured to itself, or that, maybe there's something different. Oh, contrasts from the white room with the white couch and the white rug. This room has life to it. Oh, I love the wood paneling. The character who's artistic, not artistic, who likes to paint, is noticing those things. Oh, never really consistently middle of the road, based off what I've heard in your videos. Yeah, but again, too little, too much, middle ground. It always comes down to the character. Whoever's POV it is, that's who's going to be the one that dictates the pace. If a character is a warrior and they're trained to fight and they've fought many battles, okay? In a fight, they might not be focused on the struggle of detail. What they might be focused on is the layout of the people around them. Maybe what they're striking, how they're striking, the moves they're doing. If you're a character who hasn't really fought and you're in that same battle, you're focused on avoiding things and like the violence and the tension and, trying to hide and like what you're feeling, So that would dictate the pace. One is going to slow down the pace because they're like, oh, there are soldiers. Oh my God, blood everywhere. Like they're noticing everything, But again, you could fast pace quick details. They're trying to get out of there, right? They're running around because they're trying to find shelter. So now the description should be about finding a place to hide, not necessarily blood everywhere and soldiers everywhere. So it dictates a faster pace because they're afraid. They're just trying to get out of there. But then once they get to safe, now they're like, oh my God, there was like 300 of them, and their arm was clanking and there's blood everywhere. Like now you could slow it down. For instance, when my MC, McDowell, when my MC is attacked by a machine that bursts out of a crate, I say stuff like, he fell down, the wood splintered, the expressions on faces, sounds, smells, etc. So, there are two forms of pace there. The machine bursts out might be something quick. You wouldn't have to go, the machine, a slow pace would be the machine burst out, the wood flying everywhere, splintering into the air like a display of wooden fireworks, colliding with the dust of the air and dancing across the scene, and its leg burst out, stepping onto the stone, cracking it beneath its strength. The reason you would slow down the pace to that example is if the character is being emotionally influenced by that experience. However, if they aren't necessarily shocked or they were expecting it, it might be the machine busted out of the crate, knocking splinters of wood everywhere along the ground. It ready itself taking a step forward. That's the same scene, the same beat. Just one is the character's noticing stuff because like, what the hell is this thing? And the other one is like, I'm ready. Let's do this. A robot? Not a big deal. Shh. Draws out their two swords. Let's do this. It almost turns into one of those Willem Dafoe moments where he's describing how the fight unfolded. But anyway, all right, what's the other thing? Developing a unique voice style. Let's go into that, and then I think we could call it a day. So, developing your unique voice style. Yeah, Willem Dafoe movies are great. When you're developing your unique voice and style, the whole point is to figure out what works for you to tell the story or the narrative you're trying to tell. And it comes down to everything from the lengths of your sentences, the way you use your chapters, which goes back to pacing. Are you lyrical? Are you mechanical? Are you a mix of the two? As Rose says, sometimes he adds Shakespearean elements of dialogue. You can do that. What I would recommend is not necessarily write your books, or what I would recommend is not only practicing when you write your books, but to practice writing in general outside of your books. And this will help you develop your voice. And there are a few things you could do. And I would recommend anyone who's listening to do these things. You could write out a scene that is about your life. What did you do today? How did you wake up? What was your morning routine? And you could describe it in 3 or 4 different ways. So do the same scene with the same beats, but just like I did with the robot, the machine, one is a little bit more immersive. One is a little bit less immersive. Maybe one is more lyrical. Maybe one is more mechanical. Whatever the case may be is, or maybe mix it up. Start off with slow or start off with fast pace and then slow it down in the middle and then speed it up. But what this does is it lets you find your natural voice. Again, my natural voice is lyrical, cinematic, with logical narrative movement that goes through the experiences of both the emotional experiences and choices of the characters. I like to have character-driven narratives. Doesn't mean it's the right way. It's just what I choose. But I learned that not by reading books going, what do I like in this book? But going, what I'm not seeing in books. And then based on like how I experience things, I was like, how do I put that into a book? How do I, because I come from screenwriting too. So I'm like, how do I don't see the camera when I read books like all the time. And I want to feel like I'm watching camera shots. And that's why I decided to write how I write, right? So, which we see examples of it quite often when I'm doing the rewrite through gates. So when it comes to your voice and style, if you're practicing different variations of the same scene, you'll start developing a comfort to certain techniques. I have a friend who likes to write third person present tense. For me, when I write in present tense, I feel weird. It feels off to me, like that it's happening. I tried writing second person just as a fun experiment, and that felt uncomfortable. You walk into the room, you grab the ice cream and place it into your mouth. The taste is mix and match with your saliva. Like, that's slow pace, by the way. Mix and, you're describing. And I was like, that's not what I want. So if you can't find your voice and your style, the best way to do that is by trying things. Even if you're writing a pro, just one passage, and describing something in 3 or 4 different ways. Either, maybe you describe the weather. So is it a slow pace and you're like going deep into how it's affecting you emotionally? Is it a fast pace where you're like, it rained outside today for about 3 hours and it soaked over the lawn and slowed, and all I could hear is the traffic roaring over the wet roads? That's a fast pace. Or it could be like, how did it make you feel? Did it make you think about something else? Did it comfort you? Do you like the relaxation of it? Did you sit down and close your eyes and just rest in the solace of the storm's blanket, right? Then maybe you want to get a little bit more lyrical. Maybe you want to get a little bit more mechanical. But doing that practice will help you develop your voice. When the machine attacks people who are more used to combat, I notice a lot of the details get dropped out. And well, it should. But again, if the scene is consistently through the POV of someone who is used to the attacks, then it would only slow down if it is emotionally affecting the character who is the POV. So if it's Conan the Barbarian, okay, and they're fighting a battle, they might not care about the details of the battle. They're just going in to kill and slash. But if they see somebody in trouble, now it might slow down the pace a little bit, but not enough to make it just be like, let's talk about who's in danger. Because Conan would act. He wouldn't linger on the person who is in danger. He wouldn't linger on them fearful and like crawling on the ground and worried and concerned. He wouldn't linger on what that person might be feeling. He'd be like, oh, they're in danger. Let me go help them. And that still becomes fast pace. I can't read, because reading is without me. I also can't read. That's why I use audio book. When people go, what do you mean you don't read? Don't you read your books? No, I don't read my book. I just write the books. I don't read them. Now I understand. Yeah, it's always the POV of the character is where the experience of the pace is coming from. It can't come from someone else, otherwise you're head hopping, which then is fine, but you are head hopping. And then, whatever. So it's kind of like a subconscious thing that's correct. The subconscious is triggered. Anytime the subconscious takes over, it's a trigger. It's an emotional trigger to something. If it's a conscious choice, that is, the horses ran by me, straggling across. What does that character notice about the horses? Well, who are they as a person? Are they noticing how they're running? Are they noticing the sound of their running? Are they noticing the people on the horses? Are they noticing what kind of horses they are? Or do they know nothing about horses and they're just like, oh, there's 6 horses running by? You know what I'm saying? Like, it can be that easy. If it's subconscious, the horses are running by, and there's something about horses that remind them of their youth. So what is it about their youth that brings them to the horses? And then they are reminded of that horse. Not that it creates a flashback, but the movement of horses and their muscles and the way their coats shine. The shine of the coats. Why? Well, what's the motivation? Well, maybe their father or something like that, or their mother used to have a horse farm, and when the parent and the character bonded over brushing the horse. Not that you have to have that flashback, but knowing that about your character, their position, we talk about that, their position on things creates the behavior. If the position is their parent, they lost a parent and grew up with only one parent, and they owned a farm, and they used to bond over cleaning and taking care of the horses. Well, now they notice things about the horses because it is a direct trigger to how they feel about horses, not necessarily the horse themselves, but the memory. So they notice very specific things because they have that history or background. 。 . 。  . Oh, consciousness. This, yeah, so that's all subconscious. But the conscious, like the conscious decision, again, would be like if there is no direct emotional connection to something, they're just like, oh, hey, look, 6 horses. So if you, the writer, are like, I need people to know there's 6 horses. Well, if the character wouldn't care about the 6 horses, why would they notice the 6 horses? Do you think it's something we've learned from reading books or watching films? Do you think can you define it's? It's a little ambiguous, and I don't want to assume. Do you think it's something? What is it's something we've learned from reading books or watching films? Just so I know exactly what I'm answering, because it could be anything. Because we talked about is do you think pacing is something we've learned from reading books or watching film? Do you think character development is something? So I just clarify the ambiguity. Giggity goo, giggity goo, giggity goo, giggity ga, giggity giggity goo. That habit of applying detail or leaving it out. I do not think books or watching film solely influence the habit of applying detail or leaving it out, but I do think all things in life might be a part of that. However, I think and this is a hot take. I'm saying this based as my opinion. I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm saying it's subjectively true to my experience. I think it's the misinformation of writing. I think it's the misinformation of craft. I think it's the misinformation of what makes good writing. Because good writing is making great choices. Because what is writing? It's a collection of choices. What is a character noticing? That's a choice. What is a character doing? That is a choice. What are you describing? That is a choice. Why are you describing it? That is a choice. Why does this scene happen? Why does this scene happen? Why does that scene happen? Is a choice. Great writing is a series of choices. And those choices need to have logical truth to them. The why needs to make logical sense. What we describe needs to make logical sense from the characters. So pretty prose only work when they make logical sense. Otherwise, it's just exposition for exposition's sake, or it's just randomness. It's just whatever it is, So that's my hot take, is that I think the misconception of what craft should be and how for example, what's one of the big things everyone says? You gotta show, don't tell. Right? That's the big one. But what does that mean at its essence? Show, don't tell. Does that mean never tell? Show, don't tell. Don't ever tell. Well, then, where's the context? Where's the explanation? Telling is that little seed bit. Telling is, he sat on the couch, its cushions wrapping around him as he lifted his legs to his grandmother's foyer or coffee table. Context, we are in the grandmother's house. So that's important to know. I don't know whether I notice a lot of detail in normal situations I experience unless I'm doing a task that requires focused attention, like doing breaks. Yeah, but all right, let's put it this way. My brother was a mechanic, like a professional mechanic, and occasionally he would ask me to help him work on cars. I don't remember the technical details of working on those cars. What I do remember is us laughing, how it made me feel, the things that made me come back to help him, right? For the experience. Not necessarily, I want to work on cars. I had no interest in working on cars, but I did like being around my brother. I did like laughing with my brother. But I also have like a filth phobia. Like, I don't like feeling dirty. I shower. If I go out, I come home, I shower. You know what I'm saying? When I lived in Brooklyn, if I went on the subway, I came home and showered afterwards. I can't touch the poles on the subway. I can't. If I start thinking about how, like, one time I saw someone like wipe their nose and then grab the pole, and I was like sitting in the subway like, oh, that's right, other people do that, right? So when I worked on the cars, what did stick with me? the way the oils and the grease and the dirt felt on me, when I laid on the ground to go under the car and like the stuff was on my back. So that detail, even though it might be quick and it's not something I'm lingering on, it is something that I did notice. So if I was writing a scene where a character, that is me, working on a car, what would I recognize? The emotional truth. How I would play through the characters' behaviors of their interaction, making jokes, laughing, making light of the situation, not taking it too seriously, but connecting as brothers would. But then when it gets to the filth, how does that affect me within the moment? And then what do I do because of that? The character would probably wash their hands constantly, which I did, or they would go shower directly afterwards. So it's not so much the details of noticing what you're experiencing in the moment, it's the emotional things you're experiencing in the moment. I'm just getting it down. Next time I read chapter 1, I guarantee I won't remember writing a lot of it. It's easier to see the story and know if you're rambling on or not enough. Writing in chunks makes it harder for me to see the big picture. That's a really good way to approach it, though, because when you're writing, especially the first draft, don't worry about pacing. Don't worry about, unless you're doing a zero draft. Zero draft is going to naturally sort of like dictate pacing. If you're doing it like this with the bullet points, you're going to be like for example, if this moment had, let me do this. If this moment right here was like this, okay? I already know that this is too long the pace is too slow here. It doesn't even matter what's happening. I just know that if this was all things, like this is something, like, bloop, bleep, blop. Okay. All right. If it just was like a whole bunch of stuff, this would just visually, I would know that this is slow pace. And then if I got to the next beat and it's quick, then I'm like, all right, maybe I can handle that slow pace. But it is also starting the chapter off. So do I want to start the chapter off slow pace? Well, this is plot point 4, so it is technically a reflection of, and we just had a lot of chaos with the ship almost imploding, so maybe it's okay to slow it down, right? So the visual elements helps with zero drafting. However, when you're writing, just get it out. Just get it down. Don't worry about pacing. Don't worry about immersion. Don't worry if it's even good. If you're going to just start writing, though, like if you're just going to first draft it, just write. If you're going to outline, that's different. You're seeing things unfold through small, very concise, broad general ideas. And you're able to look at that and go, does this make logical sense? This beat to this beat to this beat to this beat. And you're not bogged down into what you call the chunks, writing in chunks. Because it's just like, here's just a quick sentence. Here's a summary. But more importantly, as you do develop. But the bigger picture, you should be able to see through the outlining. If you're not an outliner and you're just writing, then the bigger picture is you got to read the chapters and then you got to kind of like notate what's happening. So you're ultimately reverse engineering a first draft, even as a pantser. You have to be like, well, what's happening? I have to make sense of these things. But the reason I do the zero draft is because I can see what the pace is. And then as I'm writing, I can go, well, do I dive a little deeper into this? Do I slow the pace down to let, in this case, Laura, Olivia's emotional, how is she emotionally affected by this moment? Is she emotionally affected by it? If not, fast pace. You know what I'm saying? Like when the gang members are moving around, or like, for example, when they're in chapter 3 where the ship is the hull is compromised and the pressure and everyone's flying around. That's quick pace because no one has time for details. They're just survival. I just need to survive. Grab on, hold on. People are flying. That guy just flew through the hull and got sucked out. Now the pace gets slowed down. Why? Chaos, gets stuck on the hull. And now he's like, huh, and he starts shaking. His eyes are popping, and he starts, and he's getting and he's screaming. And now we're in the moment because the chaos slowed down and it got focused. there is a close-up on this character. And then he gets sucked out. But the pressure starts up again. So they can't linger in that experience. So the lead gang member tries to get over, is using logical thinking, grabs the metal, throws it, and it gets attached to the hole. And then Laura runs over and we stopped the hole. Chapter 4. Now we get to slow the pace down again. So you have to think of it like that. What is the emotional experience of watching someone get sucked out? Slows down the pace because it is emotionally affecting them. If they're dealing with tension and urgency, the pace has to be fast because we're not able to linger. It's like if a dinosaur is chasing you. You know? You're not looking at the forest. You're not paying attention to the sound of your feet running through mud. However, the fast pace might be, I trudged through the mud, unable to keep my speed up as the Tyrannosaurus Rex ran behind me. It felt like I wouldn't say I felt, but it took me longer than I expected to get to the back of the Jeep before grabbing on it, and Jake took off, hitting the gas as I dragged along the back, trying to pull myself up until I finally got there. The dinosaur biting down as we finally made it over the hill. Whatever the case may be, right? That's a fast pace still. We wouldn't be like, the dinosaur chased me and my foot stuck into the mud, sucking out as it made a kaleidoscope of sounds, each foot, slower than the last and sticking in the heaviness of my steps. Like, that's too slow to create the urgency. However, if you want to create tension, they fell in the mud or they were having trouble getting to the Jeep. That's different. Slowing down the pace to create tension, okay? We're slowing down the urgency a little, but we're raising the stakes. So tension is there. Is the dinosaur going to eat the guy who's stuck or the girl stuck in the mud? So you have to use pace for tension. What would you be focusing on if I'm stuck in the mud? I'm focusing on that and the fact that the dinosaur is getting closer. You are emotionally going to be focusing on that. But you wouldn't be focusing on, say, the forest. Just saying. All right. Boop. I hope that helped. 2 hours in, we did pretty good. Thanks for all the questions, by the way. I really appreciate it. Let's get on to it. MakeARightLeftHere.com. If you want to check me out, email me, contact me, see what I'm doing, see what's going on, follow my social medias. MakeARightLeftHere.com. Do you have what it takes to make a right left here? Do you, punk? Subscribe and hit the bell icon if you've been watching and haven't done so already. Subscriber base has been going up, and I'm really thankful. Like I said, we are officially monetized. This is the first month we are fully monetized, and that's thanks to you all. And sharing, caring, and elevating this channel through support and community has just continued to do great for this channel. And my heart goes out to all that support and love. More importantly, every Saturday and Sunday, right? So every Saturday and Sunday we do a live 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Saturday is educational and sometimes business advice, and every Sunday is the Write a Book with Me series. Let me just go to, I do the week. What is the week? What's coming up this week? Let's see. Boop, boop, boop. Calendar. 'Cause I'm your calendar girl. All right. What is today? Saturday? Sunday? It's Sunday already, Jesus. Oh my, we're halfway through this month. Whatever. All right. Can't believe it. All right, so Wednesday, the 18th, we are going to do, I have 2 videos every week that are pre-recorded, and I do them as premieres. I do watch the videos, and I do comment. I am in the live section. So this Wednesday, the 18th, will be a writing advice video, balancing authenticity and marketing demands in your writing. Okay? It's going to be a fun video. On Friday, another pre-record will be the 7th video in the Con Language Creation, the Create a Language series. And then Saturday will be a video showing character through behavior. So it'll be a lesson video in real time. I will show character through behavior. And then, of course, Sunday will be the same video. Well, not the same video, but the what we did today. What we did today. Have an awesome day, Thomas. Get yourself some pizza this week. Yes, I will row. That's the goal. All right, everybody. Happy Father's Day. Much love to everyone. I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. And as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time.